Hi everyone, this is D. Girish from the Macro Story. Today I'm going to review this news article from Financial Times, which has a very strange and sarcastic tone towards Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico, who recently was shot 5 rounds, and after 2 surgeries he has survived and is currently in very serious situation. But instead of writing reports about his health, Financial Times wrote a very weird article which caught my attention, and I'm going to review this article today in this video. So do like this video and subscribe to my channel if you have not already done that. Let's start. So this article is written by someone called as Henry Foy. Okay, he's been long time working with Financial Times. He's worked in Moscow, India, and Central Europe before, and he's known to be a anti-Eastern Europe writer, or he's the bureau chief, in fact, of Financial Times. But his articles does have this tone in them that he is very critical of anything which is not pro-Western Europe, or I would rather say pro-United States. So the headline of this article is that Slovaks debate if Fico will seek vengeance after assassination attempt. So he's not concerned about Robert Fico getting shot 5 rounds and him being in serious condition. He's more concerned about if Fico will seek vengeance if he survives this assassination attempt. So that's something to note. The subheadline of the article is that the Prime Minister may try to stifle critics and further emulate Hungary's Viktor Orban when he recovers. So the writer clearly is putting Slovakian Prime Minister Fico into the same bucket that he has put Viktor Orban, Hungary's Prime Minister. So there is a kind of stereotype this writer is trying to do over here. The writer has quoted a random political consultant called Matej Kovac. You won't find too many articles written by this guy. He says, I quote, that I feel he's our most talented politician. So he actually praises him initially. But then he goes on to say that, but he has so far used that mostly to be in power rather than to maintain a long-term vision for the country. So here the writer tries to be good cop and bad cop. He first praises Robert Fico and then maligns him, saying that, oh, okay, he's smart, but he's using that to stay in power, not for the good of his country. So he passes this stereotypical judgment on Slovakian Prime Minister. Then he says that in October, the Moscow-friendly politician stated that his fourth term as premier in an unwieldy three-way coalition led by smear party. So clearly he has set the tone over here that he's pro-Moscow. Fico criticized EU sanctions against Moscow and called for negotiated settlement to war in Europe, a Kremlin line. Okay, so the writer now goes on to say that, okay, he's pro-Kremlin, he's anti-EU. Okay, and then he also mentions that Robert Fico completed 20 years in their parliament, the 59-year-old politician, so he kind of praises him. But then he also criticizes him that he has helped fuel divisions within Slovak society while striking backroom deals with different parties to take power. So on one hand, they are praising him of being in power for 20 long years. Okay, 20 long years. And then they criticize him that, oh, okay, he's done that because he's very cunning and he's taken backdoor deals with other political parties over there to stay in power. So I don't know if Slovakians are so foolish to elect someone for 20 years and keep someone in parliament for 20 years purely because that person is able to do backdoor deals, according to this esteemed writer of this Financial Times article. So that's something he has mentioned. And then he goes on to say that Fico was once communist, okay, before the fall of Berlin Wall, and then he became notionally social democratic. I don't know what that means. and then he calls him nationalist conservative. Again, I have no clue what these newfound terminologies that most Western writers have. He ran an anti-EU, anti-Ukraine, and anti-migration campaign in last year's general election. So apparently now the writer has issues with Robert Fico's anti-migration stance as well. Well, Robert Fico did a pathetic job in accepting migrants, like in Germany, France, Spain, and other European countries, right? So that's a bad thing, right? So that's what this writer is complaining about. And then he goes on to say that, but since returning to power, he did not attempt to block EU aid to Kyiv, in stark contrast with his ally Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary. So now the writer smartly tries to, make him appear that, hey, you know what, you're better than Viktor Orban, but you're still bad, but you're a little bit better than Viktor Orban when it comes to the US and Western Europe propaganda acceptance. So that's what he goes on to say. And then what he writes is that domestically, however, Fico has emulated Orban on a number of policies. So again, he says that he's similar to Orban. Now the writer seems to be a bit confused whether he's similar or he's separate. The moves of Fico have prompted criticism from Brussels, human rights groups, and liberal opposition, who have all warned against the country heading in an authoritarian direction like neighboring Hungary. Okay, so they say Viktor Orban is an authoritarian dictator, and Slovakia is also becoming an authoritarian Slovakian administration. That's what the writer is trying to imply. So he's saying that Robert Fico is following Viktor Orban, but he's not as bad as Viktor Orban, but they both are similar. That is what this writer is trying to imply. Then he goes on to say that Fico was shot just as Parliament was debating a controversial plan to overhaul RTVS, the public broadcaster in Slovakia, which accuses of having a liberal bias. That means the broadcaster was pro-United States and pro-Western Europe, pro-CIA, and that's what they mean. I mean, when a writer of Financial Times says that something is liberal, that means it's most likely US foreign policy or Western European foreign policy, which increasingly are becoming very, very, very similar. So that's something this article is highlighting. And this article also goes on to say that Fico has a long record of verbally attacking journalists. But unlike Orban, he did not use his previous time in power to create a loyal media. So again, the good cop, bad cop. One interesting point that I'm seeing here in this article is that the ruling majority is also pressing ahead with a law critics say will crack down on foreign funding and stigmatized NGOs that receive it, in a move reminiscent of Hungary's crackdown on opposition figures and civil rights groups that have financial ties to the West. Now, this is a paragraph I want you all to pay close attention to. Now, the writer is complaining that Slovakia, a sovereign country, is cracking down on foreign funding and foreign funded NGOs by the West, which are interfering within Slovakia, and that's a bad thing, and Robert Fico should not be doing that. That is what this writer Henry Foy is preaching everyone in this Financial Times. Then again, he praises Robert Fico a little bit, and the praise comes from the fact that, he's not as worst as Orban. That's the kind of praise, if you can take that as a praise. The writer concludes that when Fico came back to power, some people said he would now be second Orban, but there's still clearly a gap between what he says for his domestic audience and what he does. So it's not a black and white story. I think he's very aware that Slovakia depends on EU money, so he will not go fully against EU rules and try to control everything in every era. Now, this last paragraph, folks, please pay close attention to the last paragraph. Here, the writer Henry Foy is clearly implying to kind of threaten Slovakians that, hey, you know what? I think he's very aware that Slovakia depends on EU money. Okay, so he will not fully go against EU rules and try to control everything in every area. So this last line is what seems to be the essence of this whole article. It's basically a slander article against Slovakian President Robert Fico, who's struggling for his life right now. Instead of being concerned about his health, the writer of Financial Times, Henry Foy, is sending a threatening message to Slovakians that Slovakians are dependent on EU money and they should not go against EU. And this seems to be more of a threat article than an analytical piece. So this is the kind of propaganda that is published on a daily basis in Western mainstream media. And in this channel, The Macro Story, I'll be regularly exposing the Western mainstream media bias, and I'll be sharing my opinion on these articles. Mind you, I'm not against mainstream media. There are certain biases that are there in every news article, and particularly in some of these articles, they toe the line of certain countries, and I will be highlighting that in this channel. So this is Digrish signing off from this video. Do like this video and subscribe to my channel. I'll keep posting more videos. Stay tuned.